To the modern eye, a medieval castle is a masterpiece of architecture, a symbol of power and permanence. But, to the people who actually lived in them, a castle was essentially a giant stone refrigerator. Built from massive blocks of limestone or granite, these structures were designed to keep invaders out, but they were equally effective at keeping the heat out and the damp in. During a European winter, the temperature inside a great hall could hover just above freezing for months. So, how did the nobility sleep without waking up as blocks of ice? The battle against the cold began with the walls themselves. Bare stone is a terrible insulator. It radiates a cold that seeps into your bones. To combat this, the nobility didn't live against the stone. They lived inside a box within a box. Every room used for sleeping was lined with heavy woolen tapestries or wood paneling. These weren't just for decoration. They created a crucial pocket of air between the living space and the freezing masonry, acting as a primitive form of insulation. The centerpiece of the medieval bedroom was the great bed. This wasn't just a mattress on a frame. It was a sophisticated piece of thermal engineering. By the 14th century, the four-poster bed had become the standard for the elite. These beds featured a wooden canopy, or tester, and heavy, floor-length curtains made of velvet or thick wool. When a lord or lady retired for the night, they would climb into the bed and pull the curtains shut, creating a tiny enclosed microclimate. The heat generated by their own bodies would be trapped inside this small space, quickly raising the temperature to a comfortable level while the rest of the room remained frigid. If you were wealthy enough, you didn't sleep alone. Not for romance, but for survival. Sharing a bed with a spouse, a servant, or even a hunting dog provided extra body heat that could mean the difference between a restful night and a shiver-filled ordeal. But before you even stepped into the bed, the warming ritual began. Because a cold bed could shock the system, servants would use a bed wagon or a warming pan. This was a long-handled metal pan filled with glowing hot coals from the hearth. It would be slid between the linen sheets to preheat the bedding, ensuring that the sleeper entered a warm environment. Underneath the heavy silk or velvet coverlets, the bedding was surprisingly lush. While peasants slept on straw, the castle elite slept on massive mattresses stuffed with goose down or swan feathers. On top of the featherbed were fine linen sheets, followed by layers of heavy wool blankets. In the depths of winter, it wasn't uncommon to sleep under a furred coverlet, blankets lined with the pelts of wolves, foxes, or sables. The fireplace was, of course, the primary heat source, but it was inefficient. Most of the heat went straight up the chimney, and the stone hearth only warmed the area directly in front of it. To maximize the fire's effectiveness, beds were often placed on a dais, or a raised wooden platform. Since heat rises, being even 2 feet off the floor, kept you away from the icy drafts that whistled under the doors and through the garderobes. Speaking of drafts, the medieval window was a major vulnerability. Glass was incredibly expensive and often reserved for chapels. In the sleeping quarters, windows were often just narrow slits covered with wooden shutters, oiled cloth, or even thin sheets of translucent horn. At night, these shutters were bolted tight and covered with heavy curtains to stop the winter wind from cutting through the room. Clothing also played a vital role. While popular media often shows medieval people sleeping naked in the dead of winter, this was a luxury few could afford. Most wore long linen chemises or nightshirts. The most important piece of sleepwear, however, was the nightcap. In an age before modern heating, people understood that a massive amount of body heat is lost through the head. A thick wool or fur-lined cap was essential for keeping the brain warm, while the body was tucked under the furs. There was also a cultural shift in how they slept. Medieval people often practiced segmented sleep. They would go to bed at sundown, sleep for 4 or 5 hours the first sleep, and then wake up around midnight. During this hour of wakefulness, they might stoke the fire, pray, read by candlelight, or talk. Then, they would return to their second sleep until dawn. This midnight break allowed them to check on the hearth and ensure the embers hadn't gone out. A life-threatening mistake on a sub-zero night. For the servants and soldiers who didn't have the luxury of a 4-poster bed, survival meant sleeping in groups. They would often sleep on the floor of the Great Hall, huddled together near the dying embers of the main fire, using their cloaks as blankets. In many ways, the castle was a communal radiator. Everyone relied on the collective warmth of humans, animals, and the central hearth to see the morning sun. Surviving a castle winter wasn't about one single invention. It was about layers. Layers of stone, layers of wood, layers of wool, and the shared warmth of those around you. It was a constant battle against the elements, fought with feathers, furs, and fire. Thanks for huddling up with me to learn about castle survival. If you're glad you have central heating and don't have to share a bed with 3 strangers and a hound, hit that like button and subscribe. Would you have survived a night in a drafty stone keep? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.